Well, hundreds of staff working for The Guardian in the US, UK and Australia are protesting against the British-based newspaper's pattern. This is, quote, pattern, they say, of publishing transphobic content after a column by Suzanne Moore was published and deemed transphobic. Moore wrote a piece in defence of Oxford professor Selina Todd, who was deplatformed, meaning her invitation to speak at an event was withdrawn because she had earlier spoken at another event convened by a group called Women's Place UK, who campaign for women to have separate spaces and distinct services based on their biological sex. Professor Todd was pilloried by Labor Party activists who labelled her transphobic, but she was strongly supported by scores of ordinary women on social media with the hashtag #WillExpelMe. And they said they too were uncomfortable with anyone being able to self-declare as a man or a woman regardless of their biological sex for whatever reason. Here with me tonight is the panel, Sky News host and Herald Sun columnist Rita Panahi, alongside Melbourne City Councillor Nick Rees. Well, Rita Panahi, self-declaration of your gender, and you can do it as often as every 12 months in Victoria, is law. This is a real worry.
You can change your birth certificate in this state every 12 months without any surgery, without any medical intervention, just by saying, I identify as. And it's not restricted to two genders. You can identify as third, fourth, fifth, anything as long as it's not offensive. But this letter written to The Guardian, this protest by its writers and contributors and staff, just shows you how utterly twisted and out of touch they are with the mainstream and how intolerant they are to diversity of views. What was written in that column was not in any way controversial. There is a reason why women want to have women-only spaces, particularly when you're talking about women's shelters, talking about prisons or locker rooms and bathrooms. We've already seen, and particularly in the UK, men who identify as women being sent to a female prison, sexually assaulting female prisoners, and then being sent to a male prison after they've been convicted of crimes. The most prominent one in that is someone who identified as Karen White, sexual deviant who, because they identified as a woman, though they had male biology, were put in a female prison population, just so reckless. And those women who were abused should sue the state for millions because they were put in danger unnecessarily. And the same thing with women's shelters. You've got women who've been victims of domestic violence and abuse and are traumatised. They do not want to be in that space with people who have got male anatomy. I think it's pretty common sense.
I read the article by Suzanne Moore, and it was a sensitive article in many respects. It tried to explain what Professor Todd's sort of arguments were that she supported. Indeed, she just went to speak at something and argued for a woman's place of her own, which is one of the foundation sort of pillars of feminism. And somehow we've got into this situation where feminism, women's spaces of their own, are now denied by the trans lobby that trumps the right of half the population to choose a space where women can be, particularly bathrooms, toilets and things like that. Nick, we've gone mad.
Well, I mean, Guardian employees, like any employee, are able to complain about comments made in the workplace which they think are beyond the pale. And unlike both of you, I actually think that Susan Moore's article went too far and said things that are quite offensive. Well,
in what way?
Well, saying that oppression of women is biologically predetermined, I think that's clearly wrong. I think saying things like biological sex is a material fact, well, there's plenty of trans people who will tell you that that's not the case for them. So those commentaries, those comments were deeply offensive, and the Guardian employers were simply doing what they're entitled to do and protesting about that.
So you think a group letter sent saying that we've become transphobic and we've got to stop these people being able to publish very reasonable mainstream views is a reasonable response for 300-odd Guardian writers and staff and contributors?
Well, I think saying things like oppression of women is a biological reality I don't know
that feminists have said for
any
decades.
sensible workplace in the world which would still be saying that, okay?
You would be surprised,
saying
because that is pretty much
a person's
the feminist
biological
mantra.
sex is a material fact is, again, talk to anyone in the trans community, they'll tell you that's not the case.
I think I could go, I'll go home tonight and do it and look up the platform of any of the Labor in Australia feminist groups, and they would all say that the oppression of women is a biological fact. Now, that's not what I'm going to hold out for Moore, but I think what Moore did was to have the conversation about at what point do the rights of trans people start to trump the rights of women, the rights that women have fought for nearly 100 plus years to have entrenched as something that we now think is normal, that you go to a sporting venue, as all the people went and tried to celebrate last night, the women's football, the women's cricket, and that you have two bathrooms. You have a male bathroom and a female. Why is that suddenly now a controversial subject, Nick?
Well, I don't think those people campaigning for trans rights are actually trying to trample on the rights of women. I think we need to make that pretty clear. What they are actually doing is following the lead of many great women who have fought for equality for women. And what they're arguing for at the end of the day is for a more inclusive society, one where they don't feel pushed out. That's all they're arguing for, and they're not trying to do that at the expense of anyone else, okay? That's where you're getting it wrong.
Another topic, because we've got a teacher of a girls' school in Sydney. Her name is Kate Hadwood. She's the head of Pymble Ladies College, and she says it's pretty outrageous. Outrageous is her exact quote, that girls going into STEM classes at the University of Technology Sydney need to have a lower ATAR score. Nick, now this is a woman, teaches at a girls' school. She's a principal saying, no, girls, we are right by ourselves. We don't need any of this special help into these courses. We're good enough to stand on our own merit. What do you think about that?
Well, look, I'll start by saying PLC is obviously a very good school there in Sydney, and I'm sure that their final year marks are off the charts in terms of the performance of the girls at that school, and so they'll have the pick of the options when it comes to going to university. As for UTS making the decision to allow girls to enter engineering and STEM courses for up to 10 ATAR points lower, look, I'm not a huge supporter of that, but I'm not going to protest against it either.
Rita?
We do need to get more women into those courses. For my preference would be for funding courses or programs at high school which actually encourage more girls to want to take up those.
So they get in by merit, surprise, surprise.
No, just encouraging more girls to be interested in STEM.
One, it undermines people who get there on merit, and two, it seems absurd that we can't just respect the choices of girls in 2020. If they don't want to go into STEM, if they want to gravitate towards fields they have greater passion and interest in, then that should be respected. We shouldn't be trying to manufacture certain results for supposed equality. I think we should respect the choices girls make. And let's not forget that for more than 3 decades now, girls have outnumbered boys at Australian universities. They outperform boys throughout primary school and high school. So I find it curious that there's this drive to help girls who are already succeeding and excelling compared to male students.
That's the same quota debate we see in our parliamentarians. I want to go to another issue. I want to get this one before we go. World Vision implicated in a pretty serious multi-million-dollar corruption saga. What do you make of that, Nick?
Well, look, one thing I think we can guarantee is it'll be very damaging to World Vision. Reputation is hard won, easily lost, particularly in the charity space. And look, I don't know all the intricacies of this. It looks like there was some sort of kickback payments happening around a printing contract by someone.
Claims of nepotism. There's been someone who has left the organisation over the weekend, not implicated, the organisation says, in this immediate issue. But Rita, this is the problem with some of these big charities. We're seeing more of it. We obviously saw all those issues, not corruption, I know, in relation to the Red Cross, but a lot of angst. People felt ripped off that the money they donated to bushfires looked like at that stage it wasn't going to end up where it needed to be.
No, but I'd be far more comfortable giving to the Red Cross than giving to World Vision for a number of reasons. I think this is a charity that needs far greater scrutiny.